This RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by Brett Young. Change the game with BY7204LL, Brett Young's newest canola hybrid with Liberty Link technology.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Wednesday midweek edition of the show. Hey, thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. It is great to have you here. Also, the people that are listening to the RealAg Radio podcast, great to have you here as well. Please tell your friends, your family, your neighbors, anybody that is interested in agriculture. It is great to have you with us. The more, the merrier in this community of agriculture or agricultural passionate people continues to grow. I'm not sure that totally a little bit of a tongue twister. Okay. Today on the show, I'm looking forward to it. We had Parliament return this week. Bit spicy indeed. And we've got the end to the NDP's deal with the Liberals. We got the potential, the Conservatives potentially next week putting forward a non-confidence motion in the House. Is an election near? Do Canadians even want an election? Well, we're going to find out because today we're talking to James Moore. He is Senior Business Advisor with Dentons, based out of Vancouver, and a former MP in the Harper government, former Minister of Industry, a man of great perspective and substance. You'll see him all the time on political panels on CBC and other networks, and it's great to have him here joining us today. Looking forward to it. So we have James Moore on the program. We'll also be talking about farm safety, always important as well. And today we're going to hear from Jay Remsik. He is going to be here for a Farm Safety Roundup episode as well. So looking forward to that. If you have any feedback on today's program, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find Real Agriculture across all the different social media platforms. You're also more than welcome to call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Something I may ask, speaking of social media, one of the things I may ask this week on the Farmer Rapid Fire is I'm reading this book, and the book is all about youth and technology. Okay, and you can give me your own feedback on this. I just thought of this. This is a really interesting topic. The book is called The Anxious Generation, and it's how the great rewiring of childhood caused the epidemic of mental illness. And it's talking. So the author, I've seen the author interviewed in several on many different shows, and he talks about how the greatest human experiment ever was giving smartphones to children and also allowing them to just run wild with social media. And his argument essentially is that there should be just like we have age minimums for drinking or being able to do other things, voting, we should have it also for social media. And I believe his argument is 16 years old. No kid should have a smartphone before the age of 16. And before that, they should have flip phones and things like that. So that's his argument. I'm curious one of the things he talks about, how in an age of helicopter parents, we need to lighten up on how we helicopter and supervise outdoor activities and apply that same helicopter mentality to what kids are doing digitally. And he said that essentially there should be like a flip-flop. So curious on what your perspective is. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Does that make sense? And I don't know if there's really a difference here, urban kids versus rural kids. It's a very interesting book written by Jonathan Haidt, and I'm just about done it. I'm not quite complete, but it's been quite fascinating. So give me your perspective on that. Hey, in the agricultural news, some good news here is that, well, I've got news out of India. India has basically extended the duty exemption on peas for another 2 months. Wish that exemption was a little bit longer. But last Friday, India's General of Foreign Trade published an order delaying the expiration of the import tariff exemption from October 31st to December 31st. Now, Chuck Penner of Left Field Commodity Research, who we talk to all the time on this program, he said yellow pea prices in India dropped sharply after the duty was removed last winter and remain deflated. However, the Indian government is likely trying to offset high prices in the much larger Desi chickpea market. Also, some of the opportunity for higher prices domestically in Canada for peas and lentils may be a little bit tempered based on the fact that prices are so low in the Indian market. So that's I guess good news, bad news sandwich from that perspective. Also, I wanted to mention that longtime NDP ag critic Alistair McGregor has been shuffled out of agriculture. So with the resumption of Parliament returning this week, Alistair McGregor is leaving the Standing Committee on Agriculture and Agri-Food and leaving his role as NDP's agriculture critic, which he has held since 2018. And I will say this, and I have been able to meet Mr. McGregor on a couple different occasions, and he is highly respected. So some of you who don't necessarily follow politics, but you have perceptions, probably think that NDP and the shadow minister, the ag critic, they would, that ag critic for the NDP would probably be off yonder somewhere and not necessarily in touch with what's happening in commercial agriculture. And I would say this, I think if you talk to people that have worked a lot with Alistair McGregor, whether it's on the ag committee or just in Ottawa in general, I know talking to farm groups, there's a high respect for him. They really appreciated his perspective. And he was, I'm not going to call him the glue, but he, because he was able to be reasonable, I think it kind of allowed that committee to do some really good work. So we'll see who, well, actually we do know who the new ag critic is. It is Richard Cannings, who has served as MP for South Okanagan, West Kootenay since 2015. And it was actually a riding previously held by former NDP ag critic Alex Adamenko. I remember interviewing Adamenko. He was off yonder. We'll see what Mr. Cannings is when things get really rolling. Okay, let's take a break. And when we come back, we're going to hear from James Moore of Dentons. We're talking politics when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, of course, on Sirius XM.
Advanced canola trait technology is here. And it's soon to be the talk of the town. Optimum Glide delivers excellent yield potential and agronomic trait performance. Improved crop safety. Enhanced weed control. And a wider window of application. You're going to want to see this. Learn more at OptimumGlide.ca.
Time for a product spotlight with the Canadian Canola Growers Association. We're joined now by Dave Gallant. Who is CCGA and why are we talking about cash advance?
Well, the Canadian Canola Growers Association has been around for 40 years. The cash advance program itself has been around for over 50 years. It gives farmers access to cash flow for their inventory without having to sell. Big benefits of the program: the first $250,000 this year is interest-free, and CCGA offers the program on over 50 different products. So we do all the grains and oilseeds, livestock, so cattle, bison, hogs, goats, as well as honey. This program you only pay as you deliver your product. So there's no monthly payments scheduled. You pay when you have cash flow from your product. And the third big advantage, the only collateral, especially at this time of the year, is the grain itself.
How do they learn more? How do they get started?
Well, the easiest way is you can go to ccga.ca. If you really want to understand it, you can call us at our 1-800 number, 1-866-745-2256.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. MMP reminds you that the initial deadline to submit your 2023 Agri-Stability Form without penalty is September 30th. Visit mmp.ca today to connect with an agriculture risk management advisor. That is mmp.ca. RealAgriculture.ca. And speaking of MMP, we're going to have Marvin Slingerland from MMP on Friday's Real Ag Issues panel. So looking forward to having Marvin make his freshman appearance on Real Ag Radio on Friday. Let's talk Canadian politics. And we're joined right now by Mr. James Moore. He is former MP and now Senior Business Advisor at Dentons Government Affairs and Public Policy Group. James, it is great to chat with you.
Pleasure to be with you.
Okay, so life after politics. You've been at Dentons for quite some time. What are some of the things you're up to right now?
I mean, when I left politics, I was Minister of Industry, which is to say the second largest department in the government of Canada. So I got the opportunity to put my finger in a lot of things, from aerospace policy to auto policy, tax policy. I chaired the Cabinet Committee on Economic Growth and Fiscal and Economic Policy for the Government of Canada. So I got to sort of sample a lot of things. And Dentons is the biggest law firm in the world. And so we get to, we have clients from all over the place in the ag space and international trade, in foreign investment coming in from around the world into Canada, trying to develop resources, build businesses. So the diversity of stuff that I got to see in government is now sort of flipped now into the private sector, and I get to experience lots of really interesting stuff, sit on a few boards as well, and really enjoying the private sector and talking to media like yourself when I want to, not just when I have to, because our government has done something that's out of step with the public interest. So yeah.
I hear you. Well, hey, we're recording this on Monday afternoon. Parliament returned today. What do you expect out of this sitting of Parliament?
I think it'll be seen as shaky by the public, right? Because the NDP and the Liberals have officially, parted ways, but they're still dating, right? They're still friends with benefits, but they're not officially married in their contractual agreement. So I think actually we will have stability because, in the Canadian system, in order for there to be an election in a minority parliament, the 3 out of the 4 parties have to want an election, and the Liberals definitely don't want an election, right? They're deep in the woods in the low 20s. Justin Trudeau is deeply unpopular. The NDP have had bad numbers as well. They don't want an election as well. So 2 out of the 3 needed parties of the 4 don't want a campaign. The Bloc Québécois can have an election anytime. They're doing well in the province of Quebec right now. They can go. The Conservatives really want an election. So when the spread is so wide, it's in everybody's self-interest on the bottom end of the polling dynamic to want to sort of hold it together. So I think they'll hold it together. The big element that's rocking things is the poor performance of the Liberals in the by-elections in Toronto. There are 2 by-elections that are happening this week that are really going to be problematic, I think, for the government in terms of Justin Trudeau's ability to hold things together. So as Parliament comes back, I think Conservatives are in wind full in their sails, pretty cocky, pretty on top of their game and ready to go into a campaign. And I think the Liberals are in a turtle. They had their national caucus retreat in Nanaimo last week, and a third of the MPs didn't show up. That's staggering. Like, that doesn't happen. You're the governing party of a G7 country, and a third of your MPs don't show up to meet with the Prime Minister to talk about the fall strategy of Parliament. So this is a government that's not just deep in the back nine; they're really on their last legs.
I watched Question Period today and felt a little bit spicy. We got some new nicknames, like the Phantom Finance Minister. The Conservatives were calling Finance Minister Freeland. The Liberals were accusing the NDP of taking a hard turn to the right. I heard carbon tax Carney.
Yeah.
Many times.
Saying a few others, yeah.
Yeah. So this is clearly some stakes being put in the ground. What do you make of Mark Carney being a volunteer advisor? What do you make of that? What's the strategy?
I have 2 lenses I put on it. One is I like Mark Carney a lot. I mean, I count him as a friend. He's a very nice guy, very smart guy, very substantive person. When he was governor of the Bank of Canada, we were in government, and he was very helpful coming out of the 2008 global recession, and I think being a very good steward of the Bank of Canada. On the other lens that I put on it, though, is that it's a bit of a weird engagement that he has now, right? Because he has a bunch of engagements in the private sector, and you have an incumbent finance minister, Chrystia Freeland, who's not getting great reviews. And he is sort of an advisor to them, giving them advice. It's not known, what conflict of interest rules that may or may not have been exposed here, because he does work for companies of whom would benefit from him being able to bend the ear of the government. He's helping the Liberals, but he's not a Liberal member of Parliament or a minister. He's not committed to run for them in the next election, but he does want to help them. But he's still kind of an advisor to help the general public, but not just the Liberal Party. So he's kind of in this weird sort of half in, half out roundabout move where if things go sideways, he's going to wear some of the blame. But if the Liberals go down, maybe he's trying to earn a little bit of credit with the incumbent Liberal members of Parliament and Liberal partisans to say, hey, look, when times were tough, I was there. I tried to help. I tried to do everything I could to make sure that, our party and our values were sustained. But, when change happens, change happens. So anyway, my turn now, right? So let's go. You can tell he's trying to do a bit of a parlay here, right? So I don't know if that'll work. The net benefit for the public on the substance of the policy, I think, has yet to be seen. There won't be a budget until the spring of next year, even if Justin Trudeau is still prime minister. So I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a weird move, and it's not clear exactly what he's proposing so far. So it's high risk for him reputationally with the general public, low risk for him within the party, but net benefit for the public is pretty obscure.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've been talking about to the audience here is whatever happens, whether Prime Minister Trudeau goes down in defeat in the next election, or he decides to take the option prior to the next election, do you really want to be the next person? Like, that's a tough position. It's sort of like you want to be the fourth owner of the golf course. And if you look at the situation on the Conservative side of the aisle, you don't want to be like Andrew Scheer. Then they went through Aaron O'Toole. It took to Pierre Poilievre to find the leader that changed the poll numbers. It's a tough act to follow.
If you look through the sweep of Canadian history, it's almost never the case that the successor to an existing government does really well thereafter. It almost never happens. For example, Jean Chrétien wins 3 majorities in a row. Paul Martin comes in. He wins the next election, underperforms, wins a minority. He's gone in 2 years. Brian Mulroney is there for 8 years. He leaves. Kim Campbell comes on. She's out of office in 6 months, and she's gone. The party's down to 2 seats. Even the Conservative Party, Stephen Harper loses in 2015. We go to Rona Ambrose, Andrew Scheer, Aaron O'Toole, Pierre Poilievre, and now we're up. Took 4 leaders. Yeah. The Liberals went from Jean Chrétien, Paul Martin, Stéphane Dion, Michael Ignatieff, Bill Graham, and then they arrived at Justin Trudeau. And then, and the reason for that is in our culture is that we have a parliamentary system, but we have presidential style politics. It's very leader focused. And so the habits, especially after 8 or 9 years, 10 years Justin Trudeau has been leader of the Liberals now for 10 years, the habits, the values, the mores, disposition, the identity, all of it, the vocabulary becomes one and the same with the person. That person goes and the party doesn't know what it thinks or believes or how it should present itself anymore. And there's a bit of a scramble and a shakeup. And so after Trudeau, it's going to be a wild scramble, and that'll provide Pierre Poilievre with the opportunity, should he win, to have maybe some clear sort of horizon in front of him to set some goals, move an agenda, and go in a certain direction. But it also means that the official opposition is probably not the Liberals. The official opposition becomes the provinces. It becomes the cities. It becomes the media. It becomes expectations. It becomes the growing dynamic in Quebec right now, which we can talk about the rise of Quebec separatism that's happening quietly in Quebec.
Yeah, I heard that today in Question Period. That was actually really clear today. Is talking the rise of Quebec and some of the attitude coming from the bloc. But I want to talk about the 17 to 20 point lead that the Conservatives have right now, depending on which poll you look at. Is that insurmountable? Is this a foregone conclusion that Pierre Poilievre is the next prime minister, or is there something the Liberals can do to at least close that gap between now and whenever the next election is?
Well, Donald Trump will never become president. Hillary Clinton can't lose. She's so far ahead in the polls. So I mean,
good point. Okay.
Yeah. So you never say never. However, with this, I think we're pretty close to saying never. In part because I use the example of Trump and Hillary Clinton. So people knew Hillary Clinton, they didn't know Donald Trump. In this circumstance, Pierre Poilievre, what's most interesting about the Conservative numbers now is that there's a consensus between 10 and 20 points. He's been up now, let's say 15. For a year. Historically, when the Liberals have gotten in trouble and the Conservatives pop up in the polls, the public go, I can't believe this. I don't like this. We got to get rid of the Liberals. Give us the other guys. And they look at the other guys and they go, yeah, I don't know if I want the other guys. I'm still mad at the Liberals, but I don't know about the other guys. And so that's happened. I mean, Conservatives under both Andrew Scheer and Aaron O'Toole won the popular vote, but lost the seat count. What's interesting now about the poll numbers is that the public says they want change. But in order to win government, the public has to want the other people to win. They have to want the other guy. And that has been lacking. So now the Liberals, the public doesn't want them. they think that the Conservatives are ready, and they expect the Conservatives to win, right? So I think the 1-2-3 combo of we want the current guys out, we want the other guys in, and we think the other guys are going to win, and we're okay with that. For a year now, more than a year, Pierre has been 10 to 20 points up in the polls, and it hasn't spooked the voters into thinking, well, I don't know if we have sort of early buyer's remorse about what we're signaling here. They're actually quite comfortable. They're ready for change. And what's most interesting, if you go the next layer down in the numbers, is that the cohort of voters that are leading the change are young Canadians. It's not gray hair, senior citizens, sort of people who are culturally more, prepared for center-right governments because of the, historical alignment. No, it's young people. The biggest cohort, the biggest voting bloc, and Conservatives would win a supermajority if only people who are 18 to 35 voted. Then Conservatives lead that cohort of voters more than any other group of voters, which has never happened before in my lifetime. That's
incredible. Considering that probably there's a good pack of those that, in that Harper versus Trudeau round one, when Trudeau won to become a prime minister, the legalization of cannabis was a big issue in that election. They've switched teams, so to speak.
Well, yes, and it's been 10 years, right? We're coming up on 10 years of Justin Trudeau now being prime minister. I mean, 15, so 9, but you get my point.
What have you done lately?
Right. Yeah. But also, 18 to 28, they're 28. There's a whole new group of people. When Justin Trudeau was first elected prime minister, there were people who were 11 years old, 10 years old, who can now vote. And they don't know any of that stuff. They don't know Harper, who he was or what he was, or let alone Mulroney or Critchett. All they know is they see Justin Trudeau. And there are a lot of young Canadians who just say, I know it's become a cliched word, but the woke stuff, or people assuming that young people's, their first obsession is culture wars and social policy and climate change. Young people care about those issues, and they want to live in a decent society where we're all thoughtful and careful about each other and respectful of our differences. Yes, they care about climate change, but you know what? I'd kind of like to own a house. And, I do have an entrepreneurial spirit. I'm 20, and I'm going to be working for the next 40 years. And I don't want to just settle down in a career. I want to rise and grind and fight and push and have success and have failure. And I want to either own a farm, or I want to build a small business, or I want to try something. And I want to go, and I want low taxes, and I want to be able to have a house. And when I'm working, and when I get up in the morning and it's dark and I'm scraping the ice off my windshield, and I drive to work in the dark, and I put in a full day's of work, and I drive home from work in the dark and have a shower at the end of my day and at the start of my day, and I kick off my boots and warm up a can of soup and sit in front of my TV, I don't like people laughing at me and making fun of me because I'm a religious person, or I have certain values, or I believe in entrepreneurship, and I don't like high taxes, and I don't want my house broken into when I leave my home in the day. So, Pierre is the only guy who speaks to them. And so there's a center-right entrepreneurial sort of recalibration with young Canadians that's going on, and you see it in the numbers everywhere. Yes, I'm a conservative and all that, but I think it's really refreshing, because we've had this sort of meme about young people for a long time, that they're entitled and lazy and weak and soft and all that. No, young Canadians are aggressive and forward leaning, and they want to succeed, and they're not victims, and they want to fight and push, and it's great to see.
We've got more with James Moore of Dentons when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
We got a product spotlight with Kate Hyatt, the marketing portfolio lead for DeKalb. Let's talk about the DeKalb Coat of Farms.
Coat of Farms is an initiative to celebrate the partnership between DeKalb Seed and the farmers that are choosing it. The way that Coat of Farms works, it's a farmer-driven, artificial intelligence enhanced line of DeKalb swag. So it's an interface on an iPad or on your phone or your computer. You answer a series of questions that help drill down to what represents you. And then a 3D rendered jacket gets created.
So how long does this go on for?
That's a great question. So contest runs from August 27th through to October 15th. After October 15th, there's going to be a contest where 10 of the coats will be available to be won. through draws and from the people that participated.
That is great. DeKalbCoatOfFarms.ca. For agronomically effective dual UAN inhibition, the smart answer is Tribune Nitrogen Stabilizer from Koch Agronomic Services. To learn how its 2 active ingredients protect UAN from 3 forms of nitrogen loss, visit kochag.ca. Let's return to my conversation with James Moore of Dentons talking Canadian politics. The other recalibration that's happening is, I'm used to the NDP courting the union vote. I'm used to Liberals courting the union vote.
Yeah.
What's up with the Conservatives courting the union vote? What's at play here?
So I live in British Columbia, and so I was active in politics as a young volunteer in the 90s. I was elected from 2000 to 2015. In that time frame, there were always people in British Columbia, and they exist in Saskatchewan, Manitoba as well, less so in Alberta. People who vote provincially for the New Democrats and vote federally for the Reform Party and the old Conservative Party. And we know that they existed on paper, but you could never actually find them and meet them and shake their hand and say, what is going on in your head? Like, what's going on? But they exist. Like, they are there. And these are people who believe in the value of collective bargaining. They want to make sure that they get a good day's wage and a good day's pay for a good day's work. And they want to be treated equally, and they want to be treated fairly. And they do believe that we should have social systems out there for seniors as we all get older, and we worry about our parents and all that. They do believe in all that stuff. But they see the current sort of New Democrat progressive universe not talking about those things, about being there for the little guy, and instead talking more like, on a random day, if you turn on Question Period and you watch the federal NDP and Jagmeet Singh, you would think the 3 biggest issues facing the planet are climate change, gender identity, and Aboriginal Indigenous reconciliation. Important issues for sure for a lot of people, but those are not the 1, 2, 3 on most people's minds. Yep. And, a lot of, again, particularly private sector union people in Western Canada that I know, they said, that's not my party. And so we have an election coming up in British Columbia here. The campaign starts in a couple of weeks. There are a lot of people, I know a lot of people who traditionally vote federally conservative who are really comfortable with the NDP. And they may not be comfortable with David Eby, the incumbent premier, and they now have a provincial conservative party to vote for. But they've not been offended by the NDP, at least in the past 10 years, because they sort of have been seen to be speaking for the little guy. And conservatives have noticed that. Pierre Poilievre has noticed that. And he's making a real pitch for those people.
So how does he walk into corporate Canada? And you're kind of, those are 2 sides of the equation. You're courting the union vote, but you're also, are they pro-business?
I mean, it's funny. People have this meme about conservatives, right? That we're, pinstripe suits and Gucci loafers and all that. And that's not the conservative world. In fact, if you look at former conservative cabinet ministers who worked with Stephen Harper, like myself, some of us work in corporate Canada and we have, those sort of connections, but we were not ever the darlings of corporate Canada. That's where federal Liberals are, right? And that's not the vote that Pierre is going after. Now, should Pierre become prime minister? Obviously, he understands his obligation and responsibility to work with people who are making investments in Canada, who are employing Canadians, who are drawing in, enormous capital and wealth and talent into Canada for benefit and all that. But that's not really where votes are. So he will have, I think, a healthy balance of a relationship between sort of corporate Canada broadly and sort of everyday Canadians. But you'll notice unless he's in the House of Commons or at some kind of a formal occasion that demands the attire, he's kind of a regular guy who wears golf shirts, t-shirts, jeans, khakis, and he's just a normal guy. He's not actually comfortable wearing a suit all the time. He dresses and is kind of like the voter that he aspires to represent. And it's not a game, and it's not some PR stunt or sort of mirroring gimmick. He is just kind of that normal guy like that. And corporate Canada, broadly speaking, is for sure a relationship that he'll have to maintain, but it's not the emphasis of his platform.
What do you think they're going to be like? They would be like if they do become government. What do you think they'll be like on trade? That's the piece that not a lot of talk about it. It doesn't win elections. But it's really important to the Canadian economy. And he potentially is going to have to be a part of a renegotiation of the CUSMA USMCA agreement. This is important stuff. What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, there are certain issues where whether you're on the blue team, red team, orange team, green team, it doesn't matter. There's just fundamental relationships that have to be tended to if you're the prime minister of the country. The Ottawa Quebec relationship is unique and special and important. The Indigenous relationship is really important, and the Canada U.S. relationship is really fundamental. It's about 1 in 4, 1 in 5 Canadian jobs is dependent on trade with the United States, and we came very close to Donald Trump. I mean, he was genuinely threatening to abrogate NAFTA during the NAFTA renegotiations of 2017 to 2019. I was a member of the NAFTA Council with Minister Freeland as part of the group that was negotiating on behalf of Canada and advising the government in those negotiations. And I can tell you that was a genuine and real threat. Between Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders combined in the 2016 primary and even into the 2020 primaries, about 2 out of 3 Americans voted for candidates, Trump and Sanders. 2/3 of Americans voted for candidates who wanted to repeal NAFTA and put in something, quotes, new and different. And that's really dangerous and risky for Canada because, the weight of the importance of this relationship with the United States is so fundamental in the ag space, in the auto space, manufacturing jobs, IT. It's really critical and fundamental we have access to that market. So, yeah, Pierre Poilievre becomes prime minister. The agreement that was reached requires renegotiation and revisiting in 2026. And if we don't have a new agreement that's signed and delivered that renews it for a fixed term of some kind, maybe another 10 years or hopefully longer than that, then it goes to an annual agreement that has to get reconsidered every year on an annual basis thereafter. Well, you can imagine the chilling effect that would have on long-term investments into Canada. If people are choosing between a corporate tax rate in the United States that's significantly lower than what's on offer in Canada, and a dollar and purchasing power of the consumer in the United States versus Canada. When you look at the per capita GDP strength of the U.S. over Canada, it's a really important relationship and a really important policy obstacle for Pierre to manage.
Yeah, you look at the China EVs, right? We got the Liberals applying the 100% tariff. The Conservatives were right lock and step. There's some similarities there, which is similar to south of the border where we see Dems and Republicans talking the same tariff mantra, right? So
yeah, that was a bit of a bank shot, right? That was a way of the Liberals smartly and the Conservatives smartly aligning Canada's policies with the United States, right? So the idea of having, like, put it this way, the Canada-US-Mexico combined, but particularly the Canada-US part, but NAFTA together, is the most successful, lucrative, and job-producing, wealth-creating economic relationship in the history of the world. To protect that NAFTA partnership between us and the United States and Mexico, to keep it going, we have to be very careful about other trade relationships like China and what that does to threaten the confidence of people in the NAFTA partnership. So if China is able to import EVs into Canada, we take them in and then export them into the United States because of NAFTA, that threatens NAFTA. Whatever we get in terms of value from the China relationship on EVs doesn't come anywhere close if you're going to risk the bigger relationship. And Mexico is playing a very dangerous game right now because there are massive greenfield investments into Mexico right along the U.S.-Mexico border that are causing a lot of Americans to be very anxious about the future of the NAFTA partnership because of Mexico. So the U.S.-Mexico relationship is a really important relationship that Canada keep an eye on because that could break, in which case the bilateral, trilateral relationship between all 3 parties and then Canada and the U.S. becomes challenged because it's not just immigration. And if there's a racial and political component to it that gets torqued times 10 in the U.S. politics, but there's also a substantive economic piece of it where China is investing massively into Mexico. And those goods and products are finding their way across the U.S. border and being called NAFTA inclusive. And that threatens the value of NAFTA in the eyes of Americans.
Yeah, a great example of nearshoring that China is executing on. Okay, so I agree. I'm right there with you. But does that not mean that in the next Canadian election, we have to be having a serious discussion about military spending, and especially particular to our 2% commitment to NATO?
Yeah, it will be part of it. But it's interesting when you look again at the polls and you ask Canadians. There was a great one that was actually just done. I was looking at it for a presentation I'm doing later this week in Montreal about Canadians are asked, they're given a list of like 30 issues. And you can choose 3, your top 3 issues that you want the next government to focus on. And military spending doesn't really come in there. Donald Trump, should he become president of the United States again, he will emphasize that. And that'll be a challenge for Canada because 2% of GDP, I mean, that's an extra $20-30 billion spend on military procurement above what is currently scheduled, then that's a massive expectation given the deficits that we have and the debt load that we have. What that can be spent on that would be accretive to Canada economically, but would contribute to our national security obligations under Five Eyes, partnership with the U.S. and all that. There are things that we can spend it on. You think about aerial surveillance in the north, search and rescue capacity in the north because of climate change and what's happening up there, border security stuff. Like you want to do, in my view, you want to do as many things that are uniquely beneficial to Canada, but also hint at a partnership with the United States in the long term about continental security. So you kind of want to do a 1-2 punch where you spend on military in ways that have Canadian taxpayers being on side, but also allow you that added benefit of Americans saying the Canadians up north, we can trust the Canucks. They're our friends, they're our allies, and they're working with us to keep an eye on what's happening in the far north and doing what they can in terms of being a good, faithful partner of NATO.
Okay, before I let you go, I'll ask you the question that probably everybody asks. Prediction: when are we getting an election?
I'll do better than that. My best guess is Justin Trudeau will not run again in the next campaign. My guess is he will probably step down, probably around Christmas. I'm guessing, but we'll see how the by-elections go. I think there will be a Liberal leadership. There will be a budget in the spring and a vote probably in June of next year.
There you heard it. We've been talking to James Moore. He is with Dentons. James, it's been great to chat with you. Really do appreciate it, and I hope we can do it again soon.
Anytime. Pleasure's mine.
That was James Moore of Dentons. Some great perspective there. We're definitely going to be having him back as we move through the winter and political situations evolve and transpire. I think this is going to be a very interesting 12 months in Canadian politics. And if you got the U.S. election, and then you got, obviously we have to have a Canadian election. We've already had the Mexican election. We've got this July 1st, 2026 date when it comes to the review of the CUSMA USMCA agreement. There is a lot that's going to be happening domestically in Canada from a political perspective, but you add the international stuff to it too. And, the world's most successful trade deal, that trade deal being, again, a little bit, not necessarily up in the air. I don't want to be hyperbolic about it, but definitely some concerns around it. So it's going to be great to have access to someone like James Moore to break some of this down. And of course, you can find him on different political shows, including on CBC. Hey, protect your anhydrous ammonia, and bottom line, even if temperatures hit 15 degrees or below, that's not too late to apply agronomically effective, non-corrosive Centuro nitrogen stabilizer. Learn more at centuro.ca. When we come back on RealAg Radio, we got another episode of the Farm Safety Roundup, and we'll do that when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
Whether you're in a career within an organization, starting your own business, looking for your dream job, running your own farm operation, operating a company in ag or food, or want to hone your overall life skills, this conference is for you. Celebrating over 10 years of bringing women in ag together, join the Advancing Women Conference in Niagara Falls on November 17th, 18th, and 19th. Visit advancingwomenconference.ca for more information and to register.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
And we'll go back to another episode of the Farm Safety Roundup, and we're going to dig into more important topics around farm safety. Today we're in the middle of harvest here, or harvest is underway in different parts of the country, and there's no shortage of challenges for those who are making farming a way of life. With so many priorities, health and safety can sometimes take just a little bit of a back seat, so to speak. But fact is, this sector of agriculture, it is a high rate of lost time injuries, causing pain and suffering, but also creating an economic burden for the farm. And we need to recognize that. Keeping Canadian farms safe and helping farm operators meet their legal obligations, important legal obligations, is the focus of the Farm Safety Roundup here today. And we're going to be getting back to some of the basics and giving you some practical things to chew on. If you have employees on your farm, you have rules, and also that can include family members as well. So let's start there with today's guest. It is Jay Remsik. Jay is a health and safety consultant with WSPS. Jay, great to have you here with us today.
Thanks, Sean.
So Jay, let's talk about these rules and the shared responsibility that people on the farm have towards farm safety.
Yeah, when we talk about the shared responsibility, we commonly, as consultants, would refer to that as the internal responsibility system. And when I'm out and I'm conducting sessions or training, and I've got attendees, in the class, one of the things, whatever, that I would ask is, well, who's responsible for health and safety? And the various answers that we get, well, it's the employer, or it's the supervisor, or it's the health and safety rep or the joint health and safety committee. And sometimes there's a mindset amongst the worker, they're just there to work, and it's not their health and safety. It's not their responsibility for health and safety. But ultimately, the internal responsibility system is referring to it's everybody's responsibility. And what I like to say is, the employer, he or she has the most duties and responsibilities in regards to legislative requirements in regards to the farming operation. The supervisors, they are the eyes and ears of that employer when he or she is not there. But workers need to understand that they've got responsibilities as well. And, they've got a legal duty and responsibility to report hazards to their supervisor or to their employer. And as well, I also encourage that they report near misses. And the reporting of near misses should not be construed as, I've got to go fill out a form. It very well could just be communicating that to their employer or supervisor. And then as well, in regards to the internal responsibility system, our health and safety rep or our joint health and safety committee, their job or their task is to monitor that system. But it's important that everybody understands at the operation, they do have a responsibility in regards to health and safety.
So Jay, once you pinpoint the hazards, talk about the need to understand some of the potential implications of those hazards.
Yeah, and one of the things that we commonly see is that a lot of these businesses tend to be more reactive as opposed to proactive. That, now I need to do something after an incident has occurred. But we strongly recommend to conduct, and we refer to them as hazard assessments or hazard identification risk assessments, to take a look at the jobs or the tasks that are being conducted at the operation. Am I working with chemicals? Am I operating equipment? Operating tractors, combines, skid steers? Am I handling, livestock? Hazards associated with working outdoors, physical hazards such as, heat and cold, being exposed to noise, radiation from the sun, to consider, what potentially could happen, to the worker if they're exposed to those hazards. And once I've identified that, then to determine, well, what is the risk level? Is it going to be major, moderate, or minor? Is it going to be, high, medium, or low? But to not just have a one and done. This is an ongoing thing to identify, hazards throughout the course of the season. There could be different hazards associated with planting, as opposed to when I'm in the midst of harvesting.
And when we're looking at some of the potential implications of those risks, it's not just about the worker themselves, but it could be somebody around them, like say a visitor, right? It could be the feed salesman, or maybe it's somebody dropping off lunch, stuff like that too.
I think it becomes very important not to, as you just alluded to, not to just focus in on the workers, but to consider, if it's a family farm that has employees. I always refer to that as not only is it a workplace, but it's a homestead. Could my kids be exposed to those hazards? We have contractors coming in. We have visitors that could be, stopping by. We're conducting a tour at the particular business. We need to ensure that the information of those hazards has been communicated to those three parties.
Is there a ranking when we look at some of the control hazards, is there a ranking in terms of their effectiveness or how we prioritize them?
Yeah, we use the hierarchy of controls when we're conducting our sessions, and I'll go through them. That once you've identified that particular hazard, we want to start at the top. We want to work our way down. So we start with elimination. I've identified this hazard. Can I eliminate that hazard altogether? And I'll be quite honest, unless you're, removing the piece of equipment, we know that a common hazard in the farming sector is tractors. Well, we're not going to get rid of the tractor. But so if we can eliminate, can we substitute? Okay, so substitution, an example would be, if we're working with, chemicals, well, maybe there's a less hazardous chemical that I could use as opposed to what I'm using now. So substitution. Engineering becomes the third one. And engineering in the sense of, guarding, can I place barriers in between the hazard and the worker, followed by administrative. So I have policies, procedures in place. I've identified that hazard. I go back to the tractor. I've got a staff of 16 employees. Well, maybe I only have designated individuals operating that tractor. And that would be in my standard operating procedure for tractor operation in regards to administrative. Awareness, okay? Awareness would be the second last one, and that could be in the form of signage. I'm walking into the maintenance shop at the farm. We've got a lot of equipment within the shop. I'm thinking of a bench grinder. We know it's noisy. Well, awareness could be in the form of having signage posted that hearing protection is required. And then finally, the last one is personal protective equipment. Is there a requirement to wear a dust mask? Is there a requirement to wear safety glasses? Is there a requirement to wear, as an example, hearing protection? What I would stress, though, is we always want to start at the top and then work our way down. Because when we look at PPE as the final one, and a lot of the times, firms' operations will just gravitate to the last one. But what I'm always stressing is, PPE is great, but we are relying on human compliance. Is there some possible way that we could put like an engineering control in place that maybe then we can, reduce the risk of that particular hazard as opposed to, the workers wearing PPE?
Let's talk about the role that training plays in trying to raise the bar in regards to some of these hazards.
Yeah, so when we look at training in regards to, of the workers, let's go back to, conducting that hazard assessment. I've conducted the hazard assessment. Maybe I've just done a small one. I've identified 10 hazards. Now I've ranked those hazards, high, medium, and low. We always recommend you find a hazard that is in the high to medium category. Let's put some type of policy in place. Let's have a standard operating procedure in regards to, being associated or working around that particular hazard. Training them becomes very important for those particular individuals that they understand not only, the theory as well as the practical. Here is the theory in regards to our internal policy, but then that hands-on training of operating, let's say, a piece of equipment. And then to train on the hazards unique to the particular task. Again, is there going to be a requirement for personal protective equipment? And the key thing as well in regards to training, you need to ensure whether you're conducting a tailgate talk, whether you're conducting health and safety orientation that's going to take half the morning, that we document, so that we've got that proof to be able to demonstrate, due diligence from an employer standpoint.
So there's a lot of information here, and it's critical. It's not just the communication of some of the practical information, what you should do or shouldn't do and things like that, but it's also making sure that that information has efficacy, right? It's being able to be absorbed and implemented. Are there things that we can do to increase the uptake of some of these things on the farm?
Yeah, WSPS, as we've progressed over the years in developing solutions, I know that on our agricultural landing page, any tailgate topic that we produce comes in both English, French, and Spanish. We need to be conscious of our work staff, and maybe English isn't their first language. You could create, small videos on your phone and then do translation over to then take that and provide that to those staff members. Another one in regards to communication, just a client that I just had visited recently, they had pointed out that they had created a group WhatsApp chat with all their workers. And in particular, they were using this during the summer months for when severe weather was approaching, and to be able to get it out there fast to those workers. But using WhatsApp, using the training, the small training video, using your phone, or pictograms would be another good focus for those workers if English isn't their first language.
From a Farm Safety 101 perspective, can you give us a summary again of stop, think, and act?
Pretty easy. Stop. We've identified the hazard. What's the worst possible case scenario that could occur once I've identified that hazard, right? And we all know worst possible case scenario could result in a fatality. Okay, and that gets into the once I've identified what the hazard is, right? To think. As I just kind of jumped ahead, how bad could it be? Could it result in a fatality? Could it result in a critical injury? And then to act, once I've identified that, using the hierarchy of controls, what types of controls can I put in place to not only reduce the risk, but also to protect my workers and my staff?
Great stuff. Jay, thanks so much for joining us here today on the Farm Safety Roundup.
Thanks very much, Shaun. Yeah,
great information. WSPS has some great new safety videos online, and here's the best part. They're in 4 different languages, as Jay was talking about, and they've got a whole bunch of other easy-to-use resources like how to film your own short safety videos, things like that, so you can use to make your own examples from your own farm. Pretty cool. That'll increase some of the uptake with some of your farm employees as well. Hey, go to WSPS.ca/farm safety to find out more. Hey, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to wrap up the show.
At Vatterstad, we aim to be the world's leading partner for outstanding emergence. We're doing that through innovative tillage, planting, and seeding equipment that's optimized for your field conditions and soil types. We also offer industry-leading capacities to help you get the job done in shorter windows of time. It's all designed to give your crop the best start possible so you can maximize yields. Vatterstad, we look forward to growing together.
Featuring dual active ingredients NBPT and pronitridine, Tribune provides consistent protection both above and below ground in one convenient formulation. NBPT defends against ammonia volatilization, while the patented second active ingredient, pronitridine, safeguards nutrients from denitrification and leaching. Learn how Tribune can bring greater flexibility and protection to your operation by visiting tribunestabilizer.ca.
We did not leave a lot of room at the back end of this show. I apologize. Hey, nitrogen fertilizer is your farm's #1 expense. Farmers are working together through Genesis Fertilizers to solve the problem of high prices and security of supply by planning a state-of-the-art nitrogen plant. Security and earnings through ownership is the solution. Visit Genesis today at genesisfertilizers.com to learn more. If you have any feedback on today's program, you can send me an email. I want to hear, what are your thoughts on what we heard there in terms of farm safety? What are you doing on your farm when it comes to farm safety? Do you have that like tailgate check-in? Do you do internal safety videos? Cool idea that Jay provided there. Or what's your thoughts on what you heard today from James Moore of Dentons? Do you think we're going to have an election? Will the government fall? I want to hear from you. Haney at RealAgriculture.com is my email. Or, of course, you can call the Real Ag feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with Real Ag Radio. We'll chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this episode, brought to you by Breck Young. Check out their new BY7204LL canola with Pod Defender shatter tolerance and Defender rated club root protection. Talk to your local retailer today.